Hi foodie friends, my name is Chef Jessica Ann with Savory Experiments, and today we are making French onion meatloaf. This is not your mama's meatloaf. But before we get started, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos. They come out fresh every single Wednesday. Okay, so truth be told, I did not like meatloaf growing up. There was something about it, this brick of ground beef. But as I've gotten older, I realized there are so many ways to make a really good gourmet meatloaf. And this is one. The two things that really make this meatloaf stand apart from the others are caramelized onions and French onion soup mix. It has beef bouillon in it, which really amplifies the beef flavor in the ground chuck. One of the common mistakes people make when they're making meatloaf is putting it all in the bowl and mixing it together, but that can make your meatloaf dry because the meat is exposed to more air and the breadcrumbs are overworked. So I'm gonna make the breadcrumb mixture before I add my ground beef in. This is a half a cup of unseasoned breadcrumbs. You can use seasoned too, but there's so much other flavor from everything else that it's not necessary. 2 eggs, that's our binder. Half a cup of ketchup. You can also just use tomato paste if you'd like. 3/4 cup of caramelized onions. I have diced these up a bit. Caramelized onions, I know you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, but I make them in super large batches and freeze them so that I have them for things like meatloaf. This is going to be about 2 full-size sweet onions between the actual meatloaf and the gravy. Okay. Our other secret ingredient, soup mix. We also have a recipe to make your own soup mix on the site, but today we're just gonna go right out of the packet, okay? 2 tablespoons of dried parsley. 1, 2, okay. And 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, and I'm just gonna eyeball that. This also takes that umami flavor up a notch. Take your whisk it around. Whisk it until it's fully combined into a paste. Next, add the meat. In order to do less mixing, I'm going to break up the meat into smaller pieces as I add it into the paste. So just crumble it with your hands. This is 2 pounds. I'm gonna use all ground beef. This is 80% beef, 20% fat. The fat isn't a bad thing in this case. The fat means that it's going to add moisture to the mix so you don't get dry meatloaf, and also flavor. It's not a big deal. Meatloaf isn't the place to cut corners. This is a place where you could also do some customization. If you don't want to use all beef, you could use ground chicken, ground turkey, you could do pork, veal, or get at the grocery store. Sometimes they have a meatloaf mix, which is a mix of beef, veal, and pork. You could do a mild Italian sausage. That would taste great too, a little spicy. Okay, blend it together. I like to use my hands for this bit. It just blends faster. And then I know that I'm not over mixing like I would be if I did it with a KitchenAid and a paddle. When the mixture is fully put together, try and, as best you can, form it into a loaf shape in the bowl. You can also use a meatloaf pan. Sometimes that's a little bit more challenging with 2 pounds of meat. They're made for closer to 1 pound of meat. Bring in a pan. I do like to put parchment on it just so that it doesn't stick and it's a little bit easier cleanup. As for your loaf, right on over. I'm gonna pop this into a 350-degree oven for 45 to 60 minutes. Really depends on the oven and how thick your loaf is in the middle. What you do wanna make sure is that it gets to 155 degrees internally using a digital thermometer. While the meatloaf is cooking, I'm gonna head on over to the stove and get the gravy started. This one is pretty special. We're gonna start with 2 cups of a low sodium beef broth. Of course, low sodium so that we can control the saltiness going into it. And over there, 1/4 cup of whole milk. You can also use cream if you prefer cream. Do not suggest skim on this one. It is meatloaf, it is comfort food. Okay. 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Let that heat up and give it a good whisk. When it is heated, you're gonna add the last 1/4 cup of caramelized onions. They can be cold, you can plop them right on in there. They're gonna heat up. And the natural sugars in the onion are gonna help flavor the gravy. Even more flavor, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm eyeballing that one. Now, it's a gravy, right? So we need to make it thick. And since we aren't making this from a roux base, I am going to mix 1/4 cup of cold water with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. Whoop. Plop it right on in there and give it a little bit of a whisk with a little whisk. Whisk that into the gravy. Bring it to a low simmer, and then you should start to feel a little bit of pull on your whisk. When the gravy simmers, it'll start to thicken. And that's when you know we're at the last step of any gravy recipe. Season with salt and pepper. I really like pepper. I also enjoy salt. Okay, let's pop the meatloaf out of the oven, top it with gravy, and we'll be ready to eat. It's been about an hour. The meatloaf is cooked, and let me tell you, it smells phenomenal. My whole kitchen smells like onions. And we also have our gravy, and there's only one thing left to do, and that is to take the gravy and put it on the meatloaf. Now, if the truth is being told here, my kids aren't a huge fan of the actual gravy. So I serve it on the side and I let them smother their slices of meatloaf with ketchup, and my husband and I go for the gravy. And there you go. Dinner is served. From my kitchen to yours, have a lovely day.